We're starting off with a new theme for the conference right now. So let me introduce that. As we delve into the fabric of our conference, our first theme calls us to explore the forefront of progress: education, human capital development, and jobs of the future. Coming up are some dynamic discussions on shaping tomorrow's workforce, unlocking human potential, and navigating the ever-evolving landscape of education and employment. First up on the agenda under this theme is a panel that aims to share some insights on the future consumer and employee of the happiness economy, moderated by Mr. Suvin Bettimuni. Suvin Bettimuni is the academic director of Stafford International School. With extensive experience in many fields, including a 14-year stint as a pilot, Suvin has an understanding of the changing environment in the modern and global environment and is determined to equip students to have the skills that are required for success. Joining us as speakers on this panel are Dr. Titus Yong, Arjit Vandenberg, Kapil Viswanathan, and Shruti Lakshmi. VP of the Harvard Club of Sri Lanka, Dr. Titus Young is a senior faculty member at the National University of Singapore. He has worked in venture capital, consulting, and startups. Titus initiated an educational project and community for families to nurture their children in various character strengths, building resilience and prepare strategically for the future. Arjit Vandenberg is a senior advisor to AFIG funds focused on pre- and post-investment due diligence, interim portfolio company management, and portfolio company analysis. She has advised both direct and fund investors on portfolio valuation and PE fund analysis, including the African Development Bank and Tata Capital. Kapil Viswanathan has been instrumental in the conception and establishment of Kriya University in India and serves as the chairman of its executive committee. With a mission to prepare humanity for an unpredictable world, Kriya University aims to reimagine research and learning for the world of the future. Shruti Lakshmi is the founder and CEO of Triverse Technologies and Third Eye Learning. Following over 5 years of design and research and 4 years of spearheading the leadership team of an international school, she strives to create an engaging environment that will improve outcomes and close achievement gaps by creating compelling experiences that drive growth and innovation in K-12 education. Let's welcome this expert panel to the stage and hear what they have to say about how Generation Alpha and all those who come after will likely shape the future. Welcome.
Titus, I think we're going to start with you today. Talking to the insights into the future consumer and employee and the happiness economy and the well-being of our future generations and what's yet to come. Titus, we've been discussing, is there a gap between what is learned at schools currently and the future economy, given that you will be going into a very different economy from the yesteryear? And is there a difference in the type of student that you've seen that coming into university, even to NUS over the last many years, or is it very, very similar kind of profile, and how do you address this gap?
Right. Testing. Yeah. Actually, education for the last 100+ years since Industrial Revolution has remained fairly unchanged. In fact, within Asia, we see that schools are doing a good job in teaching content, arithmetic, reading, writing, speaking skills. However, with the rise of AI, artificial intelligence, the last few years and accelerating in pace, we see that this has upended education in many ways. And some AI experts think that we ought to nurture the next generation in things like curiosity, creativity for the creative economy, and also empathy, kindness for the care economy. Now in Singapore, we talk about the skills future, and we are equipping people to transition into the green economy, creative economy, and care economy. So the graduates that come in, some of them, a small minority of them, also grappling with the issue of why they are studying, because they have been pushed by parents to do well in the grades, and so they come in, they have good grades, but then sometimes they do not pick the course based on what they are passionate about, but they pick based on what they eliminate, right? For example, they get good grades and they end up in a business school because they don't want to be a lawyer, doctor, or an engineer. So I think there is also this issue about the crisis of meaning that we see with children. So in this panel, we are talking about the happiness economy, right? So happiness economy is not just about jovial fun, but the field of the literature in psychology education, we are interested to nurture people for well-being, people for a flourishing economy, right? But unfortunately, we are seeing the trend that going backwards. Like our teenagers are feeling really anxious, and some of them are even suicidal.
And what do you think can be done in a small way to address this gap, given the rigorous curriculums that the schools already have? And how do you prepare the children for this in a small step way? And maybe we can talk afterwards about in a big, bold, and brave way.
Yes. In fact, the rigorous curriculum that we see in schools is part of the issue because the students have very little time to nurture the skill sets, the mindset, and the habits that are essential for the world of the future, that we do not know what kind of jobs is going to be created in the next 10, 15 years when our children enter the workforce. Because you look back 20 years ago, social media marketeer wasn't a job title that people could prepare for. So in 10 years, what kind of job will become available, and we should equip them in a world of AI. So content knowledge is just one aspect, but then we ought to prepare people for this brave new world, right? So in fact, in the field of psychology, there's this thing called positive psychology. Can we go get the screen back? Yeah, in the field of positive psychology, we see this area of character strengths, building character strengths in our kids, and it has become quite mainstream. So, for example, even magazines like Scientific American is featuring this kind of topics. And how do we predict well-being? So if you look at this diagram here, the top orange section, things like curiosity, creativity, for the creative economy, and things like kindness, empathy, love, the humanities side of things for the care economy. So if you look at our kids nowadays, many of which are quite glued to our devices, like our kids, the phones, social media. We need to teach them the social self-regulation, the temperance, the blue portion of character strengths, and resilience, perseverance, courage portion. So what is interesting is these kind of things, we can nurture this in the home environment. So a few of us in Singapore and families in Switzerland, we are piloting family learning and support kind of project. And it would be great, if we can get people in South Asia, India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and so on, to join us, and then we can have this conversation. So to join the conversation and potentially explore potential collaboration, please scan this, and then we can take it offline. Yep, thank you.
Okay. So Kapil, moving on to you. I think Kriya University, as what I've known, has done a lot of work on and has one of the largest databases on well-being at the Sapiens Lab. Is there any insight? Is there any insights you can delve into about the work at the Sapiens Lab, which you can maybe elaborate to our audience? Yeah.
Yeah, sure, Sven. Happy to. It's ironic that I would be speaking about this at a happiness panel, because the insights coming out from our research are quite unhappy and disturbing. Unsurprisingly, though, the first insight that is coming out is that there is a generational decline in well-being. The 18 to 24 age segment, about 50% of the 18 to 24 age segment is what we categorize as distressed. And we measure well-being as the ability to function. It's not about mood or feeling or emotion. It's about ability to function. And the 18 to 24 age segment, greater than 50% are in distress. This same number for the oldest age segments is only about 7, 10, 12%, depending on which age segment you talk about. So we have a generational challenge. That is one disturbing insight. The second is we found a correlation between closeness to family and friends and mental well-being, unsurprisingly. And we find that persons who have close interactions with family and who have a friend they can call at 4 a.m. in the morning if they needed something, who will come and help, have substantially better well-being than those that are not close to family and friends. So there's some sort of, some element of isolation that is leading to, and individualism and isolation that is leading to decline in well-being. The third is, again, unsurprisingly, the correlation between device use and well-being. We ran a very interesting study which correlates the age at which a child is first introduced to his or her smartphone and their eventual well-being in adulthood. And it's quite disturbing. A child to whom a smartphone has been offered at the age of 6 or 7 has a 75% chance of being in distress in adulthood, as opposed to the average 50% chance of being in distress, which itself, as I said earlier, is disturbing. Finally, there's also a decline in productivity. What we find is that people with well-being that is thriving in our scale take about half a day a month off, whereas the distressed category takes about 11 and a half days. That is just absenteeism. And there is also presenteeism, which is you show up at work, but you're not productive. And we're seeing the same trends there. So overall, pretty bleak, pretty disturbing, but that is kind of where we're heading as humanity. Well-being is one of the grand challenges that we are definitely faced with.
We just discussed the research on the problem, but what are the kind of solutions that have come up in your research, or is there any anecdotal things that you know, or is there any research-backed evidence with solutions to this kind of problem? And what are the small steps that can be done as a community, and what are the big, bold, brave things that we can take forward from this?
Great question. Our approach has been to identify the root causes and try and address the root causes rather than do anything symptomatic. So the root causes that we seem to have identified are that of individualism and isolation is one. Use of smartphones is another. China, for example, some months back came out with a law that below a certain age, use of smartphones by children is just not, it's prohibited, it's not permitted. That would be an example of a big bold that perhaps China can pull off, but other countries may have to look at ways of doing this. We're also trying to bring in elements of belonging through to break the isolation and individualism. We're trying to create a culture of belonging in various communities and companies and universities and schools through smaller groups that are sort of forums of people that are more closely in touch with each other and care about each other, and introducing what we might call rituals in the day-to-day flow of work. So we're not like we're not taking anyone to an off-site, but just integrated into the day-to-day flow of work. Are there simple things that you could do that would create a greater sense of belonging? And we're also seeing, in terms of root causes, correlations between the use of between consumption of packaged foods and well-being, as well as the presence of microplastics in water, which is connected to sort of environmental abuse and so on. So there are multiple root causes, and we keep finding newer and newer root causes. But I think the approach should be to take one at a time and find and address solutions, both, as you said, at home in a small sort of contained way, accessible way, but also in a big, bold, brave way, like, say, perhaps China is trying to do. So.
Okay, great. Moving on to Aryat. We've been talking about GDP growth for years. We've heard about GDP growth from the previous panel, and it's been talked about for many, many years. But today there's a lot more talk on happiness as well, and well-being, given the lot of anxieties that people are experiencing, and happiness in the workplace, even to increase productivity. You've worked in a lot of diverse, different backgrounds, different companies all over the world, including a lot of experience in Africa and in emerging markets. What do you think contributes to the happiness of the next generation in the workplace, looking at a generational aspect and regional aspect?
Thank you. Yeah, I think the next generation or the current, the younger generation is absolutely correct in demanding a better work environment from their managers and more accountability from their leaders. Work has a huge impact on people's happiness because you spend so much of your life working. And there are a couple of fairly simple concepts that are incredibly important to employees in order for them to be happy. And I think they're also heavily linked, and I'll come to that in a bit, to GDP. So clearly the happiness of employees has an impact on GDP as well. I think firstly, employees have to feel that they're doing meaningful work. If they're not doing meaningful work, or if they're feeling they're not doing meaningful work, you probably have one of the two problems. One, the work you're asking them to do as a company or a manager is truly not meaningful, and you should get more feedback and input from your employees. Or secondly, the work you're asking them to do, you've not properly communicated the meaning and importance of that job to the company. And then autonomy plays a big role as well. Having some sort of say of how you spend your time, some flexibility, not asking employees always to work at the very last minute, that has a tremendous impact on happiness too. And then thirdly, leveraging the skills and abilities. And as an employee or as a person, being able to develop your skills and abilities and aligning that with making some good compensation is essential to having, I think, a fulfilling work life. There's generally at a company or level and investment level also a lot of thought about what is one employee in a certain sector making versus the competitor. But what's a lot more important for most employees is what I found and what we found is how are they compensated versus the people around them. If you do twice as much work as the person next to you, but you get paid half of what the person next to you get paid, that's not going to make you very happy. So the ability to properly assess contribution and improve that is also tremendously important and contributes a great deal towards happiness.
You've also worked a lot in the African region, running a large pharmaceutical company as well. And do you think there's a lot of regional differences in emerging markets that contribute to employee happiness? And what are the trends in Africa particularly and that region that you see in the change in employer culture?
Thank you. Yeah, I think there are substantial differences around the world. There are obviously employees working in an economy where there's a 30 to 40% unemployment rate are in a very different position than employees who work in an economy where there's a 4% unemployment rate. In terms of what they can ask for, but also in terms of what they're willing to give. So generally the propensity to work hard is very high in the developing economies, including Africa. And at a fundamental level, the ability and the propensity to work hard is the same or greater, right? So then you could ask yourself the question, what is the reason for having a lower GDP and lower productivity? And I think part of that, or at least a substantial part, is management. There's some external factors like education, transportation, the access to electricity, etc., that you don't have any control over, but there is a substantial part you have control over when you invest or when you run a company. And that's the management part. And that very much goes to how can you make someone more productive. And some of that is the same across regions, but not all. So if if people don't have internet at home, hand out internet sticks. And that could easily add, 20 to 30%, could give you a 20 to 30% increase in productivity. Then sometimes, unfortunately, there's a tendency to copy concepts from other markets that may not always work. So if the clients are not too focused on presentations or emails, maybe you shouldn't focus on that part. So you have to take a step back and say, what really matters? How are we going to get more clients? How are we going to get better customer service in this market with a minimal effort? And then translate that in very clear goals to your employees, which would allow them to be much more productive.
Thanks, Ayat. Moving on to Shruti. Shruti, you've been working with a lot of immersive technologies, including AR, VR, and simulations, etc., with in a school environment and settings. How effective have these immersive learning tech been with regard to learning outcomes? Has there actually been a significant outcome change in these technologies? Could you maybe elaborate again to our panel?
Sure. Thank you, Suvin. It's a pleasure to be here. With regards to immersive technologies, they can be pretty powerful in not only enhancing learning outcomes, but also in causing a perspective shift or a change in mindset. And especially when we're talking about future consumers and future employees and future entrepreneurs who are going to be joining the global workforce, I think immersive technologies can play a pretty powerful role. And there are three specific scenarios in which these can be used in order to prepare them for the future. The first is in making intangible or abstract concepts more tangible, but also interspersing them with certain skills and character traits that have already been pointed out, such as empathy, resilience, and grit and perseverance. So we've deployed a few successfully, and they've been very encouraging outcomes. For example, when we see outside, or the students see a small plant that grows on to become a big tree. But what actually happens inside, the miraculous processes that take place inside. So they get to follow, a water droplet all the way from the root, and how nutrients flow through the root and all the way to the various parts of the plant. And they kind of not only end up learning the academic content, but they also walk away with a deep appreciation for nature. And that should be embedded in these experiences as well. Also, it could be things like going deep into the brain and seeing how neural pathways are formed and how neural signals are transmitted. They get to learn as to what are habits that make a neural pathway stronger and weaker over a period of time. So this in turn sort of helps them to develop healthy habits over a period of time. And also because it's an extremely visual medium, they are fully immersed because there are no distractions when it comes to virtual reality. You see the content in a 360-degree environment, and you're entirely focused for let's say 15-20 minutes. So all they get to do is absorb what's in there. But a key thing to keep in mind is to make sure that it's not just done because it's a fad or a new thing, but it's also extremely important to kind of intersperse it with certain character traits like empathy, and also to ensure that they walk away with certain key specific skill set. And the second scenario is virtual field trips. These are a fantastic medium to go to places that we probably cannot visit in real time. And let's say like a Burza home, which is a Neolithic dwelling, an underground dwelling that was built in Kashmir, or the Indus Valley civilization, where they get to see how effective the urban planning was back in the day. So these kind of experiences offer glimpses of how things have worked in the past, while also immersing them and making them think from that perspective. And the third scenario could be a more social and a collaborative experience where they get to solve a problem together. let's say like giving them certain tools and asking them to build a Neolithic dwelling with the same kind of, the same materials that they had back in those days and ensure that it doesn't fall down. So these kind of experiences also make sure that they learn how to, be collaborative, be creative, come up with solutions with their peers. So I think it could be pretty powerful, but it should also be designed with a lot of intention and a lot of thought.
Thanks again, Shruti. Thanks for talking about the benefits of technology, but I think quite a few of our panel have also been talking about the negative effects of technology, especially on the well-being of our younger generation. How do we kind of balance this out and maybe minimize the risks and the negative effects?
Right. So I think because the current generation, Gen Alpha, are pretty much digital natives, and I don't think we could ever avoid technology altogether. Because that's going to be their primary medium as they move on and join the global workforce. But I think, like I said, it should be done with a lot of thought, and all of these virtual experiences or any kind of experience, that the learning experience that's got to do with technology, should also be supplemented with a host of, like physical and tangible in-class experiences. I think that's the key. To have a lot of discussions with both in school and at home, where the parents can sort of, ask deep questions and dig deeper as to what they felt when they experienced certain experiences, and what were their thoughts and what were their feelings. Trying to be more intentional about how the lessons are planned and delivered, and having a lot of tangible activities post the experience is also important, and also engaging in very mindful activities that kind of focus on growth mindset, and other such skills are also important. And instead of technology or academic content rather, and well-being as two different silos, I think it's important to sort of integrate them and, to make sure that they are interwoven with each other. That academic content also is interspersed with all of the skills and, character traits that we want the future generations to have. So I think it's really important that we make sure that things don't function in different silos, but rather, rather that they work very seamlessly together.
Thanks, Shruti. Go ahead, Raj.
One of the things that we encourage young people to do is to go and immerse themselves in nature. So parents and families can play a great role here and bond with their children by bringing them to reservoirs, forests, and we have organized trips to climb mountains, and when we are climbing, we are not looking at our phones, right? Or when we are going down the river on a little boat, we are not looking at our phones. So we want kids to be immersed in trees and with flora. In fact, I went to Japan to get trained on forest therapy, and I think that the forest can do a great wonders to help us, reconnect with our great world, Mother Nature.
Thanks, yes, Titus. Now I'll just put out time for the whole audience to ask any questions from the panel.
Hi, thanks for discussing this topic here today. I have a question, Kapil, on the research that you were talking about. It's kind of depressing to hear that 70% might be unhappy in life. But I was actually wondering, when you do this research, is it, happiness is somehow or could be defined as the gap between expectation and meeting those expectations? And so when I think about this, is the problem really in where the expectations are amongst these children? Or is it actually trying to meet those expectations? And where would you spend time trying to solve this problem on those two ends?
Hiran, intuitively you may be right. What our research measures is not happiness, but well-being. And well-being as defined as the ability to function. It is not about how you're feeling on a certain day or what your mood is or what your emotions are, but are you able to get through the day? Are you able to function effectively is what we measure. We have a measure called the mental health quotient, which is a measure of not just the feeling, but also the function. But you're quite right that expectations and entitlement and all that is also causing, intuitively, we all know that it's sort of causing some of the issues. But in terms of just speaking for our research, that's not what we measure.
Hi, I'm Meghna. And just before this talk, you had mentioned that there's a huge gap, that we need university almost every 2 to 3 weeks to meet the demand. Can you just elaborate on that, and how are we planning to bridge the gap in the meantime? So where do the children go? Where do the students go in the meantime?
Sure. My comment to you earlier on was about the Indian context, where there is a very disturbing demand-supply gap between existing capacity in higher education and potential demand if every citizen is entitled or has to have the opportunity to go to a college. I think between primary and middle school, there is a 50% drop-off. Between middle and high, there's another 50% drop-off. And then between high school and college, there's another 50% drop-off. So if you assume that every child that enrolls in primary school, which is nearly every child in India, has to go through college, then you need an extraordinarily large number of universities to just magically crop up. And some rough math that I did some years ago was that we'll need 2 a week for the next 25 years to meet the demand. Some part of the solution may be in redefining both school and college education in terms of, do you really need 12 years of school and 4 years of college? Or is there a way to compress that to something that is different, shorter? But I think that sort of reimagination is happening both with India's national education policy to some extent, as well as with the kind of online alternatives that are coming up. I don't think it's practical to build. Certainly not. A private philanthropy like ours cannot build 2 universities a week. I know what it's taken to build one in the last 7, 8 years, and it's been absolutely stars aligning and so many things had to come together. It's possible that if the government put its mind to it, it could expand, but even there we're starting to see challenges as the number of IITs expands, number of IIMs expands, and I mean for the non-Indian audience, these are the Indian Institutes of Technology, which are really the engineering universities and colleges that have done really well, and the Indian Institutes of Management, which have thrown up management talent that has shined globally. So I think in terms of creating just universities to meet the demand is just probably in our generation not going to happen. But there may be ways to redefine the problem, which is I think what we ought to do eventually.
Hi. Now I need help in switching on. You have to switch on for me. Is this on? Okay. I'm Rex from Baltimore, and no, I have nothing to do with the ship crashing into the bridge, but it's at Baltimore. The topic of happiness reminds me of an article in National Geographic from 2017 when it talked about the 3 happiest countries on earth: Denmark, Singapore, and Costa Rica, of which I think Sri Lanka could closely approximate. And it has to do with enough resources, enough education, enough achievement, enough wealth, but very much importantly also enough equality and lack of corruption index, which we talked about a little bit earlier. But that's not what I want to sort of bring the question as. We thought about, and Titus and I have had a chance to have some very nice exchanges, the issue of how to shepherd or curate our children's, the next generation's education and well-being and curiosity index, in addition to the IQ and the EQ, the emotional index, is, are we over-planning their lives? Is there a role in necessarily downtime instead of the 2 o'clock, it must be taekwondo, 4 o'clock must be violin, to enrich their lives so, which has, I mean, I come from a tiger father, tiger mother culture, so, I'm equally guilty of that. Or do we really need to build in free time where each group, different generations, kids and even those who are going through initiation rites, whether it be the Maasai or Aboriginals, where they establish their own social rules and in a way begin to recognize their own elders and leaders into the future. Because otherwise, of course, some would say, but you're creating a William Golding, Lord of the Flies, bunch of wildlings who's going to tear each other up. What's your thoughts on that? Are we over-planning our chargers' lives? Are we over-mentoring?
Well, I think that it's really important to let the kids have time to themselves, to explore. I had opportunities to meet some of the movers and shakers in the tech industry, people like Jeff Bezos and Steve Wozniak, and they shared with me about their childhood and their family environment. They never went to many enrichments at 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. The parents let them have the room to play, and they have places in the house that allow them to mess up. So I think that while it's with good intentions, the parents want to schedule them to try out different enrichments. I also worry that parents start to outsource too many things, including the relationship with their kids. So to build this bond, I believe that parents ought to play a role to nurture them and also give them time to explore things by themselves and come back and report to us like what have they found to be interesting, and also enough time to sleep, because I think we are a very sleep deprived community.
I think it's also important that in addition to unstructured play, I think is extremely crucial, especially during the developing age. But I think in addition to that, at least a certain amount of structured activity, be it a sport or an art, is extremely important at that age as well. But it's important to not overdo it, because any sport or art form, I've noticed that brings a lot of discipline and also resilience if they tend to stick to it over a long period of time. And I think that's important for childhood as well. So finding the balance between both unstructured and structured activities are extremely crucial, I think, for parents.
Hi, thank you all. Please give us a warm welcome and a round of applause for all of this. Thank you very much. May I call maybe Darshana over there to come and hand over the thank you gifts to our speakers? Come on, Darshana, you look quite dressed. That's my marketing, that's right. I gotta make something happen here. Come, please. Darshan, you have to give it with the Big Bold Brave facing front. Thank you all. Thank you.